Everything that we're going to be talking about tonight is going to be related to the heroin epidemic here on Long Island, specifically Suffolk County, of course, but it's not just Suffolk, it's everywhere. So, Michael, thank you. I'm going to turn the mic over to you. This is now your meeting, and we're going to listen to you.
All right, so thank you. Thank you for coming. I don't know if you're here normally or you came especially for this, but I am honored to be here. Those who know me know that this is all I want to do with my life. So tonight I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do my presentation. In the middle of it, I want to give you a glimpse of kind of part of my presentation in schools. Last year, I wanted to get into Long Island about 2 years ago, and I started contacting some bigger school districts and some bigger schools. It's my intention to carry a dynamic and effective prevention message to kids that'll change the conversation and that'll get kids interested in opening up their mouth, better communicating with their parents, better communicating with their counselors, talking more about the reality of making a better choice about it, choosing education and saying no to alcohol at 15, 16, 17 years of age. You know, I'll say this a couple times tonight, heroin's not our problem, ladies and gentlemen. Heroin is not our problem. Heroin is the end of our problem, and this problem begins much, much earlier with alcohol, marijuana, and tobacco. A lot of people don't include tobacco. For an adolescent brain, tobacco affects the exact same neurotransmitters in the brain that marijuana and alcohol do. Tobacco is a huge, huge issue, and if you have been paying attention over the last 5 years to the amount of vape stores and smoke shops that have been opening up across our country, it is epidemic. 10 to 20 stores a minute open up in America. Vaping and e-cigarettes is exploding. And the middle school population in America has increased in vapes like 600% in the last 12 months. It's a problem because this tobacco that's ingested affects the teenage brain. Number one killer on the planet, but we've accepted 493,000 Americans dying every single year. That was last year. 493,000 Americans died from cigarettes last year. We've accepted that, and still 1 out of 4 Americans smoke cigarettes. So I don't really spend too much time on it, except where it comes to an adolescent. And I'm not anti-alcohol. I don't drink. I can't drink. I'm allergic to alcohol. When I drink alcohol, I break out in handcuffs. I don't drink. Same thing with drugs. I got the same allergy to drugs. And I'm not against alcohol. I commend the people who can drink and handle it. I'm not one of those people. And so the same thing with marijuana. You know, President Obama said this past year that marijuana is no more dangerous than alcohol. I wanted to go through the television set. It is more dangerous than alcohol, and what we're doing right now in our country is not marijuana anymore. I have a movie coming out hopefully in December called Marijuana X. I've done 9 trips to Colorado. This last trip I went in April 20th. I don't know if you know the significance of April 20th, 420. It's a marijuana day in America. And I was at the Denver Park. I'll show you some pictures in a minute. And I got to interview Snoop Dogg. If you don't know who that is, bless you. You don't want to know who that is. You're not missing anything. But he was a fine individual. Great interview I had with him. And then I interviewed a gentleman by the name of, and I use that term pretty loosely, Rick Ross. And you don't know who he is, thank your lucky stars. Vulgar, disgusting display of profanity and disrespect of women and self and country and God on a stage with 15,000 kids smoking their brains out. Marijuana smoking in public is illegal in Colorado, and I was in the presence of 15,000 people who were smoking it. And I know you hear a lot of, there's people in this room probably who believe marijuana should be legalized, and I'm not here to debate. I've been pretty educated about it, and it's not legalizing marijuana anymore. We are commercializing a genetically modified product to create the 3rd biggest killer in our country. And I think it's the biggest threat to civil rights in our country right now is the legalization of marijuana, and it's a problem. And I'll explain a little bit about that in a minute. So I want to focus on, obviously, heroin. For every heroin overdose, there's 3 opiate overdoses. Percocet, Vicodin, Lorcet, Loratab, oxycodone, hydrocodone, OxyContin. That's how this epidemic began, and I'm going to explain a lot about that. But I want to give you in the middle kind of a little picture of how I present to kids. We opened up Indiana, the steered straight, we expanded to Indiana. There was a woman there who lost her nephew she was raising him, who was like her son. And she stalked me, her words, on Facebook for 2 years and watched what I was doing and watched, a lot of people, you can be anything you want on Facebook, right? You can be anything you want. People are fake for a period of time, but she watched me for quite a long time, and she started to reach out to me, and she asked me to come out to Indiana. And I went to Indianapolis, and we did some schools and did some churches, and I got to go into some prisons and some county jails, and now this thing in Indiana is exploding. 3 weeks ago, I was in Indiana for a week, and I went to a high school called Crawfordsville High School. And the day after our presentation, I brought a young kid from New Jersey with me. We went out to Indiana and did our school presentations in 7 schools. And we went to a high school called Crawfordsville, Indiana. And the day after our presentation, a 15-year-old sophomore cut school and went to the Thornton, Indiana police station where she lived. And she walked into the police station and asked to speak to somebody. And the detective came out and took her in the back. And she said, I need to talk to you. These 2 guys came to my school yesterday, one old guy, one young guy, I'm the old guy. And they had the courage to tell their story. And I had the courage to come in here and tell you what I have to tell you. And he said, what does that mean? She said, my father's been raping me for 3 years. My mother died of a heroin overdose 2.5 years ago. She found out my father was having sex with me, and she relapsed, and she died of a heroin overdose. And this detective was sick to his stomach. They arrested her father. He's in jail facing serious charges, and she was put in protective custody. No other relatives, no aunts, no uncles, no one. And the police chief emailed our coordinator in Indiana and let her know what happened. Didn't give names or anything, but let her know what happened. And she emailed me, and after I got done bawling my eyes out, this happens to me every single day. Every single day. I get emails from kids and Facebook messages and Instagram. I didn't even know what Instagram was a year ago. These kids are reaching out and they're sending emails, they're asking for help. 80% of the kids who see our presentation in school go home and talk to a parent about it. And that's what I want. I'm not the panacea phenomenon. I can't go into a school and tell you I'm going to change attitudes and behaviors towards drugs by 80%. If you bring me into your school 6 months from now, you'll see a 40% drop off in drug use. It's absurd. No one can say that. People call things that I do student assembly programs, they call them drive-bys. They call them one-shot deals. Student assembly programs aren't effective, right? How can you measure the outcome of what I can do? And, I ask people all the time, is there anything that happened in your life in a split second, in a minute, in a 5-minute period? Anything happen in your life? Did you see a movie? Did you read a book that changed your life forever? That you're never going to forget? And I've never had anybody say, no, nothing like that has ever happened in my life. I mean, of course it has. And so what I'm able to do with younger kids, okay, I show them somebody who's more in touch with them, more in proximity and age to them, and then I talk to them about, my father. My father is president of the American Pessimists Club. I don't know if you heard that club. I don't care, the glass could be on the table overflowing, and my father would be like, listen, that's going to evaporate eventually. He always gave me the best advice, my pessimistic father. And he said, you're making choices and decisions right now that are going to affect you the rest of your life. And I used to look at him like, what are you, 100? I'm 15. How am I making choices and decisions that are going to affect me the rest of my life? My father was right about 100% of everything that ever came out of his mouth, and so was my mother. But somewhere around 11 and a half, I figured it all out. I didn't need my parents anymore. I knew more than them. I could have taught my teachers, coached my coaches. What the hell did I need an adult in my life? At 11, I figured it all out. And that led to a disease that I'm going to share with you that I had when I was a kid. It's called It Can't Happen to Me-ism. There's a lot of kids today that have that disease. Invincibility, can't happen to me, that'll happen to someone else. I mean, the jails and prisons are full of minorities. I'm Caucasian, I have 2 parents. One of my parents is a lawyer. That'll never happen to me. I'm only smoking weed, I'm not doing hard drugs, I'm only popping pills, I'm not snorting pills, I'm only snorting pills, I'm not snorting heroin, I'm only snorting heroin, I'm not shooting heroin. We'll always justify this crazy behavior, right? And we'll say that it will never happen to us. Well, I turned that into a disease. It can't happen to me. I mean, that's what I share with kids. And so all the people that I use, a lot of time, most of the time, younger kids that can go out to a school and I can show them at 20 and at 23 and at 27, how these kids are working to get their life back on track because they destroyed it by experimenting with drugs and alcohol as a teenager. I mean, it's not 100%, but it's 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 people who suffer from addiction began as a teenager with tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. But what has created the epidemic that we're in the middle of, the reason why amazing kids from amazing families on Suffolk County are dying from heroin is because this began from the pharmaceutical industry. I hate to throw them under the bus. I don't like to blame doctors. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and the pastor got up in South Jersey. We have a real gang problem down in Millville Bridge, New Jersey, in Cumberland County, way down in the bottom of the state. And he was talking about the gangs, how these kids are getting Percocets and Oxycontin and hydrocodone from gangs, right? And I said, well, how did the gangs get the pills? I mean, are these gangs manufacturing Percocets? No, it is written by a doctor. It is dispensed by a pharmacy. This is the pharmaceutical industry's fault. They have created this epidemic. Heroin addict. What is a heroin addict? It's an under-the-bridge junkie down in the city, in Philly, in Newark, in Trenton, and Patterson. That's a heroin addict. Well, now the face of heroin has changed. It's 85% Caucasian, 75% male, two-parent households, middle class, upper middle class, affluent. That's the fact. How did heroin come to Suffolk and Nassau County? It's always been here, but not to this level. And it's gotten to this level by the overprescribing, the blatant overprescribing of opiate medication. Okay, opiate medication. That's where this problem began. I made 2 documentary movies. I made a movie called Kids Are Dying. One of the things I did in the movie Kids Are Dying was all filmed in Camden, New Jersey, and Trenton, and Newark, and Patterson. I interviewed 137 kids. Not one of those 137 kids was from any of those cities. They were suburban kids who ended up down in the ghetto, hooked on heroin, living in an abandoned house, shooting 20, 30 bags of heroin a day, doing whatever they had to do to support their habit. How did they get there? I'll tell you how they got there. And one of the things I wanted to do was, in New Jersey, there was a transportation project called the River Line. And what the River Line was going to do was going to connect Camden, New Jersey. Anybody ever been to Camden? Heard of Camden? It's one of the most beautiful places you could ever visit in your entire life. If you haven't, yeah, right. If you haven't been there, don't go there, okay? Camden, New Jersey, the most violent city in America, okay? And they connected Camden with Trenton, our state capital, and a little further beyond. But what it did was it connected all those little suburban pocket towns with Camden. So it was nothing to jump on the River Line and go down into Camden and go up the 2 blocks, get your drugs, get back on the River Line, and go back to the suburbs. You didn't even have to borrow your mom or dad's Lexus to go in to Camden and get your drug. You hopped on the River Line for a couple of dollars. And so one of the things I did, I put a GoPro camera on and I would ride the River Line. I can't tell you how many kids I would see that had shot up in an abandoned house in Camden and got back on the River Line to go home. And I'm recording these kids like this on seats, right? It was disgusting. And I got off the River Line, I get off the bus sometimes, I get off the bus and I'd walk. Now in Camden, you know, I'll tell you about my story in a minute, you'll understand, but in Camden, you used to have to walk like 6 blocks to get drugs. The transportation centers here, you have to walk up about 6 blocks till you met gang members that would start selling drugs. And they would sell marijuana and, you know, heroin and cocaine, and they would talk to you if you didn't look like a cop. You know, I'm looking disheveled. Now you only have to walk about a block, 1 block. And they start asking you, I got those perks, I got those oxys, right? One guy asked me one day if I needed Viagra. I was so ticked off he asked me that. But the kid actually asked me if I needed Viagra. I mean, after I got over the, why are you asking me? I mean, do I look like I need Viagra? I mean, so, but he really did. Now, how are these pills getting into the hands of gang members in the streets? This is created by the pharmaceutical industry. Right now in America, we prescribe 300,000 antidepressant, anti-anxiety drugs, and antipsychotic drugs to 0 to 1-year-old children. Between the ages of 0 one day and 1 year old in America, we prescribe 300,000. Why do we give a Xanax to a 6-month-old infant? But we do it 300,000 times a year. That's a prescription, that's not a refill. 1.5 million stimulants are prescribed in America to 10-year-old children and younger. Adderall, Ritalin, ADD, ADHD, I don't know how many more consonants they come up with. I had ADHD, my father told me to climb a tree. Now we need a pill. I had a girl a couple months ago leave the hospital. She got her tonsils removed. At the Spirit Hospital, Vineland, New Jersey. They sent her home with 4 bottles of Vicodin liquid. 17 years old. Your tonsils are removed. I got my tonsils removed. They sent me home with ice cream. A pint. A pint. Now you get 4 bottles of Vicodin liquid. Have you looked? Right? It's true. Have you looked? Anybody watch a lot of TV? Have you noticed a lot of pharmaceutical drugs on TV? Right? Advertisement. So I don't know if you heard the one about the pastor who was giving a sermon, and he kept the youth group in the church, instead of sending them out to the cafeteria for their youth group, and he kept them in the church. He was doing a sermon on the resurrection. So he's like, does anybody know what the resurrection is? And this one 9-year-old kid raised his hand. I know. If you have a resurrection for more than 4 hours, you're supposed to call a doctor. And after the pastor got the congregation to stop laughing, right, and got everybody under control again, and it's a true story, it's a joke, but it's a true story. I was sitting there, had my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, call me and said, listen, I got a question. How do I tell Lexi, his 7-year-old, what Levitra is? I'm like, why is Lexi asking you what Levitra is? Oh, we're sitting here watching SpongeBob, and the commercial came up. Have you seen the commercials? The couple, man and woman in the bathtub holding hands when the moment is right. Why wait, right? Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra on Saturday morning cartoons. The other day, I saw for the first time, I've been hearing about it for about a month, but we have an opiate drug. We have a drug for opiate constipation. Not constipation, opiate. Have you seen it? Yeah. Opiate constipation. So if you're a little constipated from all the opiates that you're on, maybe we have too many opiates being prescribed. Yes. This is a problem. This is a problem. So you know, America is the only country on earth that has pharmaceutical advertising on television. We're the only one. There was one other, New Zealand. Last June, they're off. Last June, they took them off TV. It's the most important thing we need to do right now, as far as big pharma, is get their ads off television. I testified before Congress 3 times. My last time was a couple months ago. I got done testifying. House Majority Leader McCarthy came up to me. He was telling me how good I did. I'm really articulate and everything. And he says, that one point that you had, though, you need to just kind of just give it up. What point is that, sir? The idea that we're going to stop prescribing opiates in America for chronic pain. We're never going to get rid of opiates. Why? We don't need opiates. We don't need opiates in this country for chronic pain. It does nothing for the pain. I mean, listen, I've had back pain, and I'm sure people in this room have had back pain, terrible leg pain, I understand. You have terrible back pain, and you take an opiate, guess what it does for the back pain? Not a friggin' thing. Nothing, zero, absolutely nothing. All it does is block the pain receptor in the brain from getting the signal. So in my opinion, it makes it worse, because now you don't feel the pain, and you might do things that are gonna make the problem worse. Opiate medication does zero, absolutely nothing for chronic pain. He said, we have 16 lobbyists for every one member of Congress. I said, what are you talking about? He said they're the largest lobbying group in Washington, the pharmaceutical lobby. For every one of me, every congressman, every senator, there are 16 lobbyists for every one of me. That's what we're up against. That's what we're up against. The second biggest lobbyist is the insurance industry. The 2 biggest problems in this issue. We've been fighting a war on drugs, right? We've been fighting a war on drugs for a long time. So let me just play a quick thing. If it's the right one.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to summarize for you the...
So we love Nixon, right? And yes. Not a lot of people do. We talked about the war on drugs, what a failure it was, and we all blame it on Nixon, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to summarize for you the meeting that I have just had with bipartisan leaders. America's public enemy #1 in the United States is drug abuse.
I don't think that there's a state, a region, a town that isn't just overwhelmed and just drowning in addiction.
I mean, for somebody to think that they can go out and say that they don't have that problem, they have to be, it's a joke, they have to be laughed at. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I don't think there's a family in the United States that has not been touched by addiction.
I think folks are now calling it an epidemic because it's expanded to places they thought it wouldn't expand to.
The worst health crisis, and no one knows it. It's a health epidemic, for sure. Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. It's way different than when I got credit for it. Absolutely. The numbers are staggering.
Well, it's happening in every single city. It's the same story, just different characters.
You know a heroin addict, you just don't know you know one yet.
So American Epidemic was my second film, and it was the national version of a movie called Kids Are Dying. Kids are dying, and they are, and I'm doing whatever I can possibly do to stop it. And what I want to do too many things, and for the last couple of weeks, I have an amazing God who talks to me, right? And kind of pushes me in different directions when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, walking where he wants me to walk, but I might be doing too much. I am so passionate. This is my life. I've dedicated my entire life to this. I don't have a job, I don't have health insurance. This is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And so 4 years ago, I decided I wanted to become a drug counselor. And I got my educational certificate. I became a drug counselor in New Jersey. And I was working on my state certification. In New Jersey, a CADC, a Certified Alcohol and Drug Counselor, is really irrelevant. You need to be an LCADC with a master's degree. So that's what I'm pursuing. I'm at Liberty University. I'm almost done with my master's in addictions counseling. And at the time, anyway, I was working on my hours. And I was working under an LPC to certify my hours. I had 26 kids on my caseload. And in the span of 10 days, 4 of those kids died of a heroin overdose. 19, 20, 22, and 23. The 19-year-old Mark D'Ambrosio, a full academic ride to Fairleigh Dickinson University, injured in soccer, put on Percocets for a rotator cuff tear, and went home with 60 Percocets, and went back for a refill a little earlier than it normally, but he convinced the doctor how much pain he was in. And this was a great Fairleigh Dickinson student, so the doctor wrote him a second prescription for Percocet. Then he went to a second doctor and a third doctor and a fourth doctor, and he got busted selling Percocets because another student thankfully told on him, and they arrested him and kicked him out of school and kicked him off the campus, and he went home to Voorhees, New Jersey, a very affluent town, a couple miles up the street from Camden. And his girlfriend, who was a little bit older, she relapsed on heroin, and so did he. And his 11-year-old sister found him one morning in his bedroom. He was supposed to drive her to school. And so I'm standing behind his hearse with 7 other gentlemen. I didn't want to be his pallbearer. His mother asked me. I was his counselor, and he's dead, and you want me to be his pallbearer. I didn't want to. My wife made me, and I'm glad she did. But I'm standing behind the hearse with 7 other gentlemen about to take that little 19-year-old kid's coffin out to take him to his resting place. And the woman I was working under was walking towards me. Her husband was parking the car. She was walking up the hill. We were waiting for family and friends to park their cars. And she was getting closer to me and closer to me, and I just caught her eye, and I just was looking at her, and I'm like, something's wrong. This is the 3rd kid that was being buried. And as she got closer to me, she said, don't tell me someone else is gone. If you tell me someone else is gone, I quit. I can't do this. And she just put her hand on my shoulder and said, Ashley. And Ashley was the 22-year-old, 2-parent household from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. My house would fit in our living room. It was incredible. And I walked away from counseling. And I said, I need to do something in a bigger macro way. And I was working at the time. I was doing this in schools. I was filming this. I wasn't filming this project, but when those 2 boys and 2 girls died, I wanted to tell their story because their story became part of mine. And I set out with a camera to Camden, and I started interviewing kids. And I came up with a movie called Kids Are Dying. And they are. I interviewed 137 kids, every single one of them hooked on heroin. 131 out of the 137 had abused prescription medication. 131 out of 137 had abused prescription medication. 137 out of 137 smoked weed, drank as a teenager, and smoked cigarettes. Every single one of them. Every one. Now, if that's not an empirical study, I don't know what is, right? So I put this documentary together called Kids Are Dying. I'd worked on a couple of video projects. I worked for HBO Vice. I did a documentary called Forks Over Knives. I worked on some other projects, OxyContin Express, but I never did a project all by myself. And so this was a project I was pretty proud of. And I have a friend that works at Paramount Pictures who got me a meeting in New York with A&E. And I got to A&E, I'm sitting in New York, there were 7 producers in the room. We played the 47-minute documentary, and 3 of them were crying. 2 of them had lost their kids to an overdose. And I knew I had something. And the executive producer walked into the room and he said, "This is fantastic, we love what you've done. We don't usually use projects with a low bit rate like this." I mean, I was using small DSLR cameras, I don't have some $100,000 video camera. And he said, "But we really like it, except it shows this from a New Jersey perspective." And quite frankly, the nation doesn't care about New Jersey, right? I mean, who does, right? Who cares about New Jersey? I mean, think about it. You only pay tolls to get out of New Jersey. You don't pay tolls to get in. Who would pay a toll to go to New Jersey, right? So I said, "Sir, this isn't New Jersey's problem. This exists everywhere." And he said, "Exactly. That's what we want to see. We want to see a national perspective." A national perspective? What do you want me to go to, 50 states? He said, "No, 25 should do it. You could go to 25. You want me to go to 25 states and replicate kids who are dying?" He said, "That's exactly what we like." I'm like, "I guess I could do that. What's the budget?" He said, "Oh, we don't fund independent projects." Independent projects? I'm nobody. I spent I know the term disposable income's kind of an oxymoron, right? But I spent every penny of disposable income. I traveled to New Jersey to film this movie, right? Now you want me to go to 25 states across the country? I'm thinking, that's airfare, that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't do that. So I'm on my way home, drive down the turnpike. My lawyer had come with me for that day. We were expecting to do a deal, right? And so my wife has got this good news, bad news kind of game she plays with me. You know, what's the good news, what's the bad news, right? Usually it's all bad news with me, but I said to her, "Well, what do you want? Give me the good news." The good news is they love it. They think it's great. They even like the low bit rate. They're interested, but they want a national perspective, not the New Jersey perspective. She's like, "Well, what's the bad news?" I'm like, "Well, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is if we empty our savings account, I sell every stock that we have, and we move from this house into a smaller house." She says, "Tell your story." I said, "No, did you hear the part about emptying our savings account?" I'm like, "I'm going to spend everything. There's no way I can do this." She says, "Michael, do it. We'll make it. We've lived in a box before. Darling, I really don't want to live in a box again, you know?" So we literally, it was right after like really the peak of the housing problem crisis in New Jersey. We sold our house. It was on the market 3 days. The second person who came to see the house paid asking price. We were out of the house in a month. We were into another house in the same month. And I traveled the country. I went to 40 states. I interviewed over 500 people. And I put a movie called Heroin Epidemic. And that's what kind of brought me to Long Island when I started coming out to see these schools. And on the back table, I have Kids Are Dying. It's $15 online. When I come out like this, I just sell it for $10. Heroin Epidemic sells for $20 online. I'm selling it for $10. And I have a Long Island version. It's 38 minutes long. That's all about Long Island. And I sell that for $5. I also have a CD back there of recovery music. Anybody you know in recovery, it's all good, positive recovery music. And this is how I'm trying to support myself, pay tolls, pay gas, travel across the country. I have 5 more films I'm working on right now, 5 more films. I don't have a penny. I'm so broke I can't pay attention. But I need to get into schools to talk to kids because I don't want to tell them my story. I tell kids all the time, I tell SACs, or I tell counselors and social workers and principals and vice principals, listen, if you want to bring somebody in to tell a story, if you want to hear a story, go to an AA meeting. Go to any meeting. There's plenty of stories. I don't want to tell a story. I want to teach my story. So I took my story, I wrapped it in an educational lesson. I bring 2 other kids or 1 other kid with me, younger in proximity to their age, wrap their story in an educational lesson, and 8 out of 10 kids who see it go home and talk to their parents. Like, I don't know how your kids are, but when you come home from school, how was school today? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing. What'd you learn? Nothing. Really? Waste of 8 hours. I hate these tax dollars I'm paying. These kids go home and talk to their parents about it. And the parents email, "My kid came home talking about this." Kids go home and tell their parents that they might have a problem with drugs. 4 out of 10 kids who we are able to survey 2 weeks after the assembly say they've talked to a counselor or a teacher in school about the issues that we raise. We're changing the conversation. I came to Comstock High School last year. There's a guy there just retired, 40 years in education. And he comes up to me in the middle school. I did the high school one day, we did the middle school the next day. He came over to the middle school to see the presentation, to see if it was the same presentation that we gave in the high school, how it was different for the middle school kids, how it was more age appropriate. And so he said, "I wanted to come over and see if it was the same or different assembly." Let me tell you something. In 40 years of education, I have never seen an assembly program come into a school and so hit the mark and so change the conversation in a school, change the conversation in a school, and impact the student population. And I said, "Could you put that in writing and put it on your letterhead?" Right? And he did, and it's on my website. Like, in 40 years of education, I've never seen a program where it hit the mark. I mean, I couldn't have asked him to write that. He said it. I'm really that good. He gave me a gift. If I figured it out a long time ago when my mother tried to introduce me to the gift, I would have had a much different life, and I would be sitting before you talking about my travels around the globe as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But I have a different story. And so because I have a different story, because he gave me a second chance, because I never went to a funeral in my life. Cassie was at my first funeral. Colin was my second funeral, Mark was my third, and Ashley was my fourth. I never been to a funeral in my life. I guess no one close to me ever died, right? Since those 4 kids, I've been to 92. 92 funerals in 3.5 years. This is an epidemic, and I'm telling you right now, it's gonna get a lot worse. It's gonna get a lot worse, so I wanna share some information with you. I tried to come up with a longer title for this, right? And I ran out of space. And I purposely do a long title because this is a very complicated issue. And there are agendas and there are people on both sides. When you talk about treatment, there's so much division in treatment. We want to put kids on methadone and Suboxone and Subutex, buprenorphine. We want to put them on Vivitrol. We want to only send them to abstinence-based programs. We want to send them to 28-day programs, 14-day programs. We want to put them in IOPs. We want to do a lot of things to fix the problem, and everyone is against each other, and we're so siloed in our approach. Insurance companies are so bad in this product. It's unbelievable. I had a girl leave Sunrise, not Detox, Sunrise Treatment Center in Lafayette, New Jersey. Day 4, they woke her up. She was in for a month. They woke her up on day 4, told her insurance authorization had expired. Now her parents, once they got this girl into treatment, you know what they did? They're both retired, they're in their 70s, their 27-year-old daughter is destroying her life. They've had 5 years of chaos in their life. As soon as they put their daughter into treatment, they booked a vacation. They were on vacation. They were on a cruise. They couldn't get a hold of them, so they gave the girl bus money to get home. And the bus money, instead of going all the way to South Jersey where she lived, she got off in Newark. And they found her in an abandoned building the next day with a needle in her arm. Now, I don't know if I blame that insurance company, but I blame the treatment center, because if you take a client in and on day 4 their authorization runs out, guess what? Eat the next 26 days. I'm sorry, eat the next 26 days. And I only work with treatment programs that do that. Now, the insurance company is at fault, absolutely. We are in a society right now who believes that we can send opiate-dependent and opiate-addicted people to outpatient and get well. And then if they fail at an outpatient level, then we'll give them a higher level of care. It's absurd. We even send people to 28-day treatment programs and expect them to come back. And people right now are attacking abstinence-based programs because the failure rate is through the roof. My wife and I are responsible in the last 3.5 years for sending a little over 500 people into treatment. And I'm telling you right now, if 20% of those kids are clean, it's a miracle, honestly. This is an epidemic. An absolute epidemic. So I want to share a lot of information with you, but one thing I'll tell you on my website, most of these slides, I put a couple extra slides in for you tonight because I have different things with you, but most of these slides are right there on my website. So you can look and you can share. If you want to use them, if you're in the field and you want to use them. That was great. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, a guy from, he was a drug recognition expert, and he was doing a presentation in Atlantic City called Current Drug Trends. And I have a current drug trend for staff. I love doing teachers. Educators walk on water, and to me, and I love doing them because now I can impact the teacher, an educator, a counselor, and they can go impact a lot of kids, right, with some information. And so I like to do current drug trends too. So I'm in the presentation, and he gets to this part on Molly, which is a drug, okay, it's pure ecstasy, methyldiazepine, methamphetamine, and he had 5 slides on Molly. And they were my 5 slides off of my PowerPoint presentation, right? And I don't put no watermark on there. I don't need to say it was me or protect it, right? And so I go up to him after the presentation, I'm like, I really liked it, man. It was a great presentation. I especially liked that part you had on Molly. He says, yeah, I got those slides off of a website called Steered Straight. So Steered Straight right here, and he looks at my shirt, he's like, oh, sorry. I said, no problem. I mean, theft is the highest form of flattery, but I didn't say that, but it is. I said, just use it. And so I want you to use it, but I want you to look at it and read it. We need to talk about this, and we're not talking about this. I'm going to say something that, if you get a chance at the end, if we're talking or something, you tell me if this offends you, because I want to start talking about this. And I don't know if it's appropriate. So this is the first time I've ever said it, and I really care about its appropriateness. Last Saturday we had a football game in North Warren Hills, New Jersey, and a 17-year-old quarterback had mono. And he was sick. He wasn't diagnosed with mono. He wasn't home. He didn't tell his coaches and his parents how tired he was all the time. And he had mono, right? So in mono, your spleen gets enlarged. And so he got hit and it ruptured his spleen. 7-year-old kid quarterback died last Saturday, right? Tragedy, right? And so on Sunday and Monday, the school district announced the wake is tonight. They closed school. They closed school half a day today. The funeral's tomorrow. They were expecting 10,000 people tonight for his wake. 10,000. The school district is closed tomorrow. They closed the entire school district down. A GoFundMe went up on Monday from a friend of theirs to raise money for the funeral expenses, and they went to raise $15,000. Last time I looked at it today, it was like about almost 80 grand, right? And so there's a campaign, a signature campaign to name the field, the football field, after this boy. This kid was your typical BMOC, big man on campus, amazing kid, good student, great family, loved women, respected his mother. I mean, he was a good kid, right? Star, and he died of a tragic spleen, injury in a football game. And so they're expecting 10,000 people tonight at his wake, and his funeral, and the entire school district is closed, and we want to name a football field after him. Now, what if he died Saturday of a heroin overdose? I don't know that that's less of a tragedy to me. Now, to some people, there's a big difference, right? I don't think there's a difference. But that's an example that we're not looking at this, and we're not talking about this, and we're not treating this because these are kids who are doing this to themselves. It's a choice, it's a moral issue, it's not a disease. These are 18 to 24-year-old kids. Listen to this. I went to 12 Long Island schools last year, and every single one of them loved me. And that one ComSwab dean of students gave me that reference, and I had a reference letter from every school. Most of the principals said it was the best they've ever seen, called me the next day, emails from teachers. I can't teach my students 2 days after this assembly because all they want to do. We were at Ridgefield Memorial High School today, and between the two police stations we were walking out, and the teacher came out of our classroom. She's like, I got 2 kids in here crying right now. And I'm like, that's great. I'm glad they have you. She's like, thank you. It's unbelievable. I'm not even teaching today. The rest of the day, we're going to talk about this. I asked the students today, how many of you know somebody who died of a drug overdose? And 3/4 of the kids raised their hand. This is Bergen County, New Jersey, which happens to be the 4th highest per capita overdose rate in the state of New Jersey. This is in the affluent districts, the good counties. These are good kids. This is what's real, and we're not talking about it. So we started calling our Suffolk and Nassau County schools that we did last year, Amityville, Wyandanch, and Ward Melville, 3 Village, even though there's no drug problem at all in 3 Village, but we actually went there. Mount Sinai, there's no drinking, underage drugs, nothing in the school, but we went there anyway. So we're starting to call these schools. And the principals were saying, like the principal and I said, we really loved you last year. We're going to bring you back. We're going to bring you back. For the students, but we're not going to do a parent. See, what I really want to do in a school district, I have a whole elementary school program. I don't do it, my wife does it with 2 actors. It's skit-based, it's incredible, right? But I do middle school kids, high school kids, I want to do staff, I want to do a parent community event at night. I want to systemically hit a whole district, right? Because the kids are going home talking to the parents can bring the kids for another presentation of a different kind at night. And so the principal says, but we're not going to do a parent academy again this year. And I go, why? He says, well, I'm actually getting calls from real estate agents who are telling us to lay low on the heroin alarm because they're having buyers ask them if there's a drug problem in Suffolk County. Now, I thought one principal, one real estate agent, then a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, said the same exact thing, that's what he heard. Then a superintendent told me the exact same thing. Then a school down in Nassau County, not near these other schools, told me the exact same thing. Real estate agents calling schools saying, listen, lay low on the heroin alarm. We don't want people thinking there's a problem in Suffolk County. There's a problem in every county. It's not Suffolk County, it's every county. I put up some things I really believe that these are our biggest problems that are leading to this epidemic. And alcohol's right on the top of my list. It kills more kids than every other drug combined. It's the #1 drug killer next to tobacco in our country. 47 college kids die on college property or on college campus every single school day in this country. It's an epidemic and it leads kids to move on. Marijuana, right underneath it. Prescription pills and heroin. It's deadly and it's happening, and we're having a real rise in methamphetamine. In American Epidemic, I got a chance to interview The meth cop, he's been on Fox and Headline News and CNN. He's from St. Louis, Missouri. He's busted more meth labs than any other law enforcement officer in America. And now he's not busting hardly any meth labs, but the meth confiscations in Missouri are skyrocketing because it is now cheaper to get your methamphetamine out of Mexico than it is to make it. My wife is from West Virginia. Her brother died in a meth lab explosion. Her other brother was a meth addict. There's no meth labs in the entire county now, but methamphetamine is bigger than it's ever been. Why? It's cheaper to get meth out of Mexico because, see, we took the marijuana market away from Mexico and we sent it to Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. Oh, in Washington, D.C. But they were smoking marijuana in Washington, D.C. in the Capitol building for years and years and years. But synthetic cannabinoids, fake marijuana. Someone was talking about it earlier, fake marijuana. Coming out of China, right through DHL. Synthetic chemicals, bath salts. In Baltimore, they call it moon rocks. In Florida, they call it flocka. Now they call it flocka in Kentucky and Tennessee and West Virginia now because it got out of South Florida into Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee because these people are still going down to Florida and still getting their pills, not from pill mills anymore because Pat Bondi, the Attorney General of Florida, has shut most of that down, but they're getting their pills from urgent care centers, which is the new pill mill. But I didn't say that. Why is this happening? Why? I wish I could point to one thing. I wish I could say to a parent, well, why do kids start doing drugs? Well, it's because of this. It's because of a plethora of reasons. There's so many reasons why this is happening. I can't put my finger on one. There's a lot of reasons why this is happening. But I love this comic. The guy visits his son in jail and he says, I don't know where we went wrong with you, son, but his real son's over in the next cell. And he's like, I'm over here, Dad. How out of touch is that father? He's out of touch. But, you know, I hear superintendents saying this doesn't start at school. These kids aren't learning about drugs in school. This starts at home. And then I hear parents say, my kids are not learning about drugs at home. I don't do drugs here. They're learning about this in school. They're learning about it everywhere. You can buy a lot of drugs right on the internet and have it shipped right to your house. Up until a year and a half ago, we were doing that with heroin and cocaine, right on the internet. It's just absurd. You know, this is about desensitizing our youth. This is about no longer talking and teaching about self-worth, self-love, coping skills. We don't teach coping skills. Now our teachers in America are evaluated by students' test scores. Our entire education system has changed in this country, and we teach to tests, and it's about these subjects. There's states in this country that I visited that talk zero about drugs and alcohol in health class. In New Jersey, we have drugs covered in health class sophomore year. Sophomore year. They talk about drugs. We talk about the DARE program, right? The DARE program is a great program. I wish it would change in 6th grade, but we can't rely on law enforcement to teach kids to say no to drugs. I mean, Nancy Reagan had a great line, and we blame her and say, well, just say no didn't work. Well, if we just said no, we wouldn't be in this mess. Yes. We wouldn't be in this mess. I hate when people say just say no didn't work, and Nancy Reagan, they blame her. Like, she dedicated her entire life to just say no. There was a board game, just say no. I mean, she brought Michael Jackson around the country with one glove and talked to kids about, you know, just saying no to drugs. If he just said no, he would still be here. If we just said no. But it's not that simple, and it's not that easy, but it's necessary. I did a vigil talk a couple months ago, and I got up and I said, this is 100% preventable. This is 100% preventable. And I got attacked by this woman who lost her son. How dare you say that something I missed or could have done that saved my son? And I said, how did you get that out of this? Like, if your son never picked up drugs in the first place, he wouldn't be gone today. How do we get kids to not pick up in the first place? And we're not focusing on alcohol. I mean, I do prom assemblies every March in Florida, May and June in New Jersey, and graduation assemblies and transition end of the year assemblies. And I'm dealing with parents who think it's okay for their kid to drink in the house. I know my kids are going to drink, so I have everyone come to my house and I take everyone's keys and put it away. Why? Because you're going to reduce underage drinking outside of your house? No, you're going to increase underage drinking outside of your house. You've condoned underage drinking. You think they're going to only drink in your house? It's absurd. It's absurd. So desensitizing our youth, like South Park, having a Blood and Crip pep rally. For those of you who don't know, Bloods and Crips are gangs, okay? Dressing Tweety Bird up as a Crip. a gang member and a comic character, and putting people like Lil Wayne on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. Lil Wayne is an artist who pretends to be a gang member, and they put him on the cover of a magazine with a gang sign and a red bandana hanging out of his right pocket, which is significant, and he's on the front cover of a music magazine, which happens to be the #1 Rolling Stone cover of all time, right? My problem is not with him, it's the message that he sends to kids. When Charlie Sheen was having all his problems, it was a joke. I mean, we joked about it. Late night hosts, and I'm not trying to squash anyone's First Amendment right to comedy, but he had a sickness and an illness. Do we treat domestic violence the way we treated it with Chris Brown and Rihanna? I mean, he bashed that girl's face in, and it was almost condoned. I mean, Hollywood's not on board with this, where separation hate is glorified on television. It's the highest ratings with the, I mean, do you remember when Breaking Bad was on TV? I watched it, all 7 seasons of it. I thought it was a great choreographed show, but then we put little characters in Toys R Us. And the characters, they have meth lab equipment. In Toys R Us, and there's a character there in a little box, and it's the meth lab, and the guy from Breaking Bad in Toys R Us. Like, we're desensitized in this country. I'm not one to blame TV and videos and movies and stuff, but it's a factor. Grand Theft Auto, this game, $1 billion in the first 3 days of sales, is the #1 selling game in the world, where you can kill a cop and advance in the game. Like, killing a cop when you lose? Couldn't you lose if you kill a cop? No, you kill a cop and advance in the game. You can actually, in the game, there's a part in the game where there's an elderly woman getting money out of an ATM machine, and you can go up behind her and blow her brains out with a gun and take her money. And it advances you in a game. It's absurd. And then there's Miley Cyrus, right? And to this day, I still can't explain that, so I'm not going to try. But role models, I mean, who do kids look up to as role models? We don't talk, listen, the way law enforcement in this country is being painted by our media is disgusting. Disgusting. And we allow this garbage as we do. Did anybody read Time Magazine 3-4 weeks ago, cover story, what it's like to be a cop in America today? I urge you to go on time.com and read that article, what it's like to be a cop, and not just cops should read that magazine, but all cops should read that story. But think about it. You know, 2 heroes get assassinated in their police car, and the protesters at the funeral get more coverage on CNN than the hero's funeral. It's absurd. It's absurd. And you don't think this is trickling down on our kids? You're out of your mind. And it's not a race issue. They want to make it a race issue, but you don't think it's penetrating kids? It's penetrating kids. When this kid died, Corey Monteith, he was the star of the Glee show, right? When he died in his hotel room alone in Toronto of alcohol and pill poisoning right out of rehab, right? The only Glee show I watched is the last episode because they were going to kill the character off. So I was watching, and all the stars, it was their real best friend who died, so they didn't have to act in that episode, right? And when they killed the character off, they never said how the character died. He just drifted away. What a teachable moment, Hollywood. You can tell kids in America, guess what? Drugs will kill you. Prescription pills will kill you. What did they do? They didn't address the issue. They let the character just drift away. In New Jersey, the biggest argument we had when Whitney Houston died was whether to fly the house down, right? It was absurd. I show this picture to kids, they don't even know who she is. Brittany Murphy, they don't even know who this is. Heath Ledger, I mean, they know who this is, right? Michael Jackson, but what about Philip Seymour Hoffman, Oscar Award for Truman? I was in Monmouth County the day he died, and I heard about it. It was all over Facebook, and I had a chance to go into Greenwich Village. And I sat in Greenwich Village outside that apartment for about 6 hours. It was long after that the body came out, but I was interviewing people, and they were crying, and I mean, like, did you know him? Like, well, no, he's one of my favorite actors, and they're just like, what? It was surreal for me. Like, here's complete strangers upset about an actor, and Katie Couric is the first time she mentioned heroin when he died. First time Katie Couric said the word heroin on television, and for a couple of weeks it was an ongoing story, and now it's over. I mean, think about it, it's over. We're not talking about him anymore. Lisa Robin Kelly, dead at 45, from the That's 70s show. A lot of people don't even know. I can sit up here and give you 100 sports figures. and 100 actors that are dead. I don't have to go back. Remember when we were in school, we had to go back to Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison, right? We don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. Now some kids see it as a part of life. We make it a celebrity show. Stars going to rehab. I mean, it's absurd. And drugs continue to kill dreams. I mean, how eerie was that? Whitney Houston's daughter dying in a bathtub the exact same way her mother died. Why can't we teach kids about this? Why can't we talk more about this? Why? Well, did you know 9 out of 10 drug and alcohol abusers started when they were a teenager? This is not kids picking up heroin at 22 years of age. This is kids picking up tobacco and marijuana and alcohol as a teenager and hearing from the president that it's not a problem and hearing from other people marijuana is not a drug anymore. And alcohol's okay to drink in your parents' basement. I'm not talking about cultural alcohol consumption. I have no opinion. I'm talking about kids drinking, consuming alcohol, and then getting access to Percocets and Vicodin and oxycodone, addicted to an opiate, dependent on an opiate, and turning to a heroin. In person I got to interview in American Epidemic. I do this thing with Al Jazeera Television, and I got a chance to interview the deputy director of the DEA. And I was allowed to use the footage for my movie. And I was sitting there, his name's Jack Riley. He's been law enforcement for almost 50 years, the DEA for over 30 years. I was intrigued by this guy, right? And so, I mean, law enforcement used to be my enemy, okay? Now they're my hero. I got a chance to sit in a room and interview the deputy director of the DEA, and I said, Jack, you know, or Miss Riley, whatever, what keeps you awake at night? And this man, without even batting an eye, he said, suburban gang migration. Urban street gangs migrating to suburban and rural America to supply heroin to a market that was created by drug dealers in lab coats. And a shadowy existence of the cartels, who will stop at nothing to put pure heroin into our country, right? The marijuana market in Mexico has disappeared and it's been replaced by pseudoephedrine from China, manufacturing methamphetamines, and you can get synthetic chemicals that many of these drugs come right through customs because they're not technically illegal. And when we find the ingredients and we make them illegal, they find a new ingredient. And they're shipping this stuff into this country. And kids are, I just lost a kid a couple weeks ago from drug court in Burlington County, New Jersey. He died from synthetic, it's called Scooby Snacks. It was an incense. It was sold at the gas station in his town. He smoked it, rolled it up in joints and smoked it. It was a synthetic cannabinoid, fake pot. It wasn't fake pot, it was poison. And he smoked it. You know why he was smoking it? Because he took drug tests twice a week for drug court, and drug court can't test for this stuff. They can't test for it. It's not on the drug, it's not on the tests. So what kind of message do we send about alcohol? You know, look at the advertisements kids see and the acceptance kids see, beautiful women, you know. Don't you wish we showed them advertisements like this? Like, don't you wish this was the Super Bowl commercial, right? Did you watch the Super Bowl this past year? Did you see the commercial where the woman comes home with her groceries and goes upstairs and finds her son overdosed on heroin? Did you see that? No, you didn't see that? Probably didn't play in Long Island. You can go on YouTube and type in Super Bowl heroin commercial. Matter of fact, I'm going to download it and start playing it. It'll blow your mind.
First you stole prescription pills from your mom. You threw back a few, and then they were gone. So you're jonesing real bad, yeah, you need some more. So you call a shady guy and say you're looking to score. And that's how you got addicted to heroin. He came over quick, said he got something new. For just $10 you snort or chew. Said just one time and then you'd be fine. But soon you OD'd and now you're dying. And that's how you got addicted to heroin. And that's how you OD'd on heroin.
And such ridicule and such, they played a carnival song, a really upbeat carnival song, while they were showing this terrible scene of a mother running upstairs and finding her son dead of a heroin overdose. And people were like, terrible music they played, it's unbelievable, totally unfitting. They played that music specifically for a point, to make a point to you that we are not talking about this problem. We're not talking about it. You know, it reminds me of Rick Warren. You ever read The Purpose-Driven Life? Amazing guy, pastor in California. His son blew his brains out with shotgun. Right? He kind of left the ministry for a year, secluded, getting his stuff together, and he said, you know what, in America it's amazing. We can talk about everything from the neck down, but we can't talk about anything from the neck up. I'll never forget, I was in Annandale prison. I was going in for groups of the day, and my wife's, for some reason, my wife's ID hadn't been approved or something. She literally had to sit out in the car for 4 hours while I went into Annandale prison and did groups with kids who were in a drug treatment program in the prison, right? Imagine that, me, ex-con, I'm approved to go into a prison with my wife, who's never been in trouble in her life, she's not allowed to go into a prison, but, so she sat out in the car for 4 hours, right? It was the day that Sandy Hook happened in Connecticut. And I came out in the car, my wife was sitting there in the car, bawling her eyes out. I'm like, what? And she just says, listen. And my hair stands up thinking about those kids, those little babies, those little babies in a classroom that got blown away. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade kids got blown away. And we talk about guns, we talk about violence, we don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about mental health and the drugs that this kid was on. We didn't talk, we were so proud to raise that kid's house. Think about that house that he grew up in, that he killed his mother in before he went to the school and killed his kid. They raised it, right? I've been to that site 3 times. The first time was 2 weeks after it happened. The second 2 times, you can't get close to that site. They've got it all cordoned off because they're building an amazing memorial to those little kids. Fine, amazing. They're raised to school. They're building a huge memorial. You can't even get close to it. Let's raise the house. Let's get rid of it. Let's just get rid of it so we don't have to talk about it. So we don't have to talk about it. This is such a huge problem, and it's going to get worse. It's going to get so much worse because our kids believe that alcohol is a problem, that weed's not. And weed's not addictive. And weed actually cures cancer, right? This is a picture I took at the park. That's not fog. There was no fog that day in April. Okay? That's marijuana smoke from 15,000 kids that are smoking weed in a park, right? We legalized marijuana. Congratulations. We've legalized marijuana. Life here sucks, right? That's what they say. So if you go on YouTube or Google and you type in marijuana, you'll get 99.9% positive and you'll get 0.01% negative, right? And so here's some pictures that I took at the park. Very happy people, right? I mean, they're stoned, they've been there all day, very happy people. This was the day, this was the night, a lot of kids. And I'm gonna start doing this. I took so many pictures of 3-year-old kids on their father's shoulders, 4 or 5-year-old kids being held by their parents' hands, walking around this park where everyone is getting stoned. And law enforcement all over the place, it's illegal to smoke weed in public in Colorado. What could they do? They couldn't do anything, right? Congratulations, Colorado and Washington. We have, and this was in the park where alcohol was not allowed. They weren't allowed to have alcohol in the park. Everyone had alcohol in the park. This was an advertisement I took out of a phone book at the hotel. It was from an appliance store. Free edible or free marijuana or an edible of your choice. Buy your appliance and kick back while we hook up your washer and dryer and smoke some weed. It was an advertisement from an appliance store. This is what this is about. Commercialization of a drug, the genetically modified drug. You ever see those guys standing on the corner with the Verizon sign or the pizza sign, right? They were standing that weekend because 420 weekend, they had $20 eighths. Anybody use Nutella? You can go to Colorado and get Nugtella, marijuana-laced Nutella. This was a Newport ad that they turned into a marijuana ad in the Denver Post. This was a store I went into with my other friend there that was posing. Cookies, candies, brownies, gummy bears, cotton candy, suckers, lollipops, all these edibles, wine, THC-infused, this was really weird, THC-infused energy drink. I'm thinking, THC, marijuana energy. Okay, this is an advertisement. If you're old enough to remember that advertisement where they advertised cigarettes, okay, now they're using the same ad. It's kind of ironic. I'll never forget, and I have a video, I'll never forget when the 9 executives from the tobacco industry were brought before Congress. And Senator Roberts asked them, we need you to say on the record that whether you believe nicotine is addictive or not. And one by one, the mic went down the table. Nicotine is not addictive. Cigarettes are not addictive. Tobacco is not addictive. Nicotine is not, one by one, all 9 of them said the exact same thing. Nicotine is not addictive. They testified before Congress. We can find them billions and billions and billions of dollars and it doesn't make a difference. 1 out of 4 Americans still smoke cigarettes and 493,000 Americans died last year from cigarette-related illnesses. And we have an epidemic brewing with our pharmaceutical industry and marijuana is fueling the fire. We don't need to legalize marijuana. It's already decriminalized in 27 states. You want to decriminalize it? Fine. We want to change this, but there's drug harm reduction people in this country who want all drugs legalized. They want all drugs legalized. Most of the people who want all drugs legalized have never done drugs. You go stop at 7-Eleven on your way home and pick up a blunt with the marijuana already in it, we're gonna have a problem. A problem. The number one killer is alcohol. We want to legalize marijuana, and I'll give you an example. I wish I had the things here. I don't. But in Colorado, everyone has to sell marijuana at the same price. The same price. You know what? I really should talk about it. I went into a marijuana dispensary. Let me tell you something. The difference between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana in Colorado. Absolutely nothing. There's no difference between the two. Zero. The only difference is there's no tax on medical marijuana. Colorado is the safest state in America. The most healthiest state in America. Colorado. The only difference between marijuana that's recreationally sold and medically sold is tax. $50 for an eighth of marijuana. They sell it downstairs recreationally. You pay $38 tax on top of that $50. You go upstairs to the medical dispensary, you pay $50, no tax. So 60% of the retail marijuana that's sold in Colorado is sold to out-of-state residents. You know why Colorado residents don't buy retail? Because they get a medical marijuana card. There's over 360,000 medical marijuana cards issued to Colorado residents. It's the healthiest state in America. Okay, and 360,000 people are so sick they need a medical marijuana card. Why? So they don't pay tax for marijuana. So I went to the dispensary with my New Jersey driver's license. I was allowed to buy 1/4 ounce of marijuana. So I went in the store and I bought this Tangerine Sunrise. That says 5%, that's the THC level. THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, it is the ingredient in marijuana that will get you high, right? So the level was 5%. Now I know there's no one in this room, well one, there's no one in this room that smoked marijuana back with me in the 60s, 70s, well not 60s, 70s and 80s, right? The marijuana we were smoking was about 3, 4, 5% THC level. So that's what I bought. I bought an ounce of Tangerine Sunrise. And then I said to the guy, visiting from New Jersey, I got some, you know how we are in New Jersey, we're nuts, right? I got some kids back in the hotel room, they were a little bit scared about coming up here. They think Big Brother's watching them or something, right? And they really want to get high today, so can I buy some Super Gupta Kush? Super Gupta Kush gets you really high. 21.5% THC. I was allowed to buy one. Well, he sold me two. No problem. Here. And I said, listen, my wife is with me, and I don't know if she wants to get really high today or a little bit high today. So can I get some Girl Scout cookies? 18.2% THC. And he sold me my 1/3 ounce. Then I went to 21 more dispensaries, and I bought 80 1/4 ounces of marijuana in one day with my New Jersey driver's license, all cash. I went to the Denver crime lab with Denver District Attorney Mitch Morrissey, and they tested all my THC levels. Now I had everything logged, except for one purchase I did it all on a GoPro, it was all recorded for my documentary. I bought the lowest THC level I bought was 5%, the high THC level I bought was 21.5%. And when the THC came back on Tuesday, this Tangerine Sunrise was 24% THC. 24%. This Super Gupta Kush was 54% THC. Now see, everybody in Colorado is going to sell the marijuana at the same price. It's regulated. You have to sell at the same price. So if you have a marijuana dispensary and you have a marijuana dispensary, how do I get your customers? I genetically modify my marijuana to increase the THC levels, and we're selling goo and butter and dab, this concentrate stuff. We're selling it to kids. And the THC level is 80 to 90%. This was the High Times Cannabis Cup, the big trade show on the 421 that they had in Colorado. And there was over 80,000 kids and people who attended this trade show. Outside in the trade show, there was about 300 vendors, and they had tables set up like this. And I don't know if you can kind of tell what this kid's doing. The first 3 years of the trade show, the vendors gave out marijuana samples with their store on it to get marketing, to have people come visit them. Here, smoke this is really good. Here we got this grape flavor, we got this tangerine flavor. Come see us, here's our card. Well, the state of Colorado said no more, you're not giving out any more marijuana. So here's what they did. They set up little bombs all around the tables. And they had lines of kids. And this person would come over and put a concentrate on that bomb. And this boy would bend down and he would take a big hit of the marijuana while this person put a flame to it. And they would take a big hit and get high and walk off. Then the next person in line would come put their same mouth on that same mouthpiece and smoke more marijuana. Then they would go to the next table, and the next table, and the next table, and they would get high all day. And I couldn't figure out, outside the fenced area, there was about 30 ambulances, right? And I was like, damn, what are they expecting, a riot or something? And all morning I couldn't figure out why they were there. Until about 2:30 in the afternoon, I started seeing them come in one at a time. These kids were catatonic. They were passed out. And the EMTs would come in. Some of them were put on IVs and brought to hospitals. They were absolutely out of their mind. Here's another guy from the shop. He's selling sandals and all sorts of other stuff. Here's all the concentrated marijuana he's putting on a bomb right here, and this kid smokes it. And then this is a whole line right here. This is a whole line right here. This is a whole line. All these things. Look, the guy's like, oh, I gotta take a Facebook photo of you hitting a bong at the marijuana trade show. See, this is what's coming. You can watch Sanjay Gupta on CNN Weed Show talk to you about kids who have Gervais syndrome and poor old ladies who need their marijuana and glaucoma. You can believe all that. It's a lie. It's a lie, and the top 9 executives from the 9 biggest tobacco companies in our country were brought before Congress, and they told them nicotine's not addictive. That's what's happening in Colorado. That's what's happening in Colorado. This is not about the legalization of marijuana for poor, sick people who need it. This is about the commercialization of a new drug. And I spent so much time on that because I'm telling you what's hooking our kids, what's getting their brains ready. Every marijuana dealer I know is also a heroin dealer. And if I'm selling marijuana to kids, I want to put heroin in my marijuana because I want you to taste it. Yesterday, I tried to email this picture. Yesterday, I had a meeting in Cranford, New Jersey. I got out at 12 o'clock. My wife was blowing up my phone. There was like 6 messages in there. I call her back. I'm like, what's the matter? She says, you need to call Ralph. Ralph lives near us in Vineland, New Jersey. I call him up. His son, pre-med student, right out here. He graduated Stockton University with 3.78 GPA and went to pre-med right out here at NYIT, New York Institute of Technology. Pre-med student. And he went to the Lombardi rest area and prepared his heroin and shot heroin in the bathroom, walked out to his car, and he started having an overdose. His girlfriend pulled over, called 911. He's sitting in Englewood Hospital right now with a tube down his throat. He's 24 years of age. He's brain dead, and he might never wake up. As a 24-year-old kid, med student, right here. This is who this is affecting. The kid started with Percocets. He has wisdom tooth taken out and was prescribed 60 Percocets. Sister had his wisdom tooth taken out. He stole her Percocets. The father had pain medication in the medicine cabinet. He stole the medication. It's been going on for years. How he got through Stockton with that kind of GPA is beyond me. How he got through his first year of medical school, pre-med out here is beyond me. But he's a heroin addict. Now he's sitting in Englewood Hospital, and he might not wake up. Okay? This is all synthetic cannabinoids. 4 months ago, Time magazine dedicated the cover story to the thing that they said, the rise of fake pot. This is a picture I took of the Scooby snacks that kid took. Here it is, potpourri. On the back of it, this is potpourri, and this is sold, and it's marketed to kids. On the back it says, not for human consumption. It's exactly what it's for. It's exactly what it's marketed for. But it allows gas stations to sell it. Why are gas stations selling potpourri on little displays at the counter with little glass stems with roses in it? I don't understand. This is how serious this is. This is serious. Don't believe it's not your kid. Don't believe it's not in your backyard. So 8:25. This is not about the drugs. This is about the brain. 9 out of 10. I'm not saying 100%. 9 out of 10. This is about kids who begin with marijuana, tobacco, and alcohol. This is about kids who get introduced to prescription medication, especially opiates. This is about the influx of heroin into this country at levels and purity levels we've never, ever seen. And this is about to get a lot worse. 2 years ago, Long Island had 43 heroin overdoses. The following year, it jumped to 144. Why? Because Long Island put the iStop program into place and made it harder for opiate-dependent addicts to get their opiates. So if you're an opiate-dependent addict and you can't go into a doctor anymore to get your opiates, it's not like you're just going to be like, well, I guess I have to quit. You're going to turn to heroin. And heroin is everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And the flow of it and the supply of it is going to get worse because, in my opinion, we're focused on ISIS and ISIL, whatever you want to call it these days. The focus is coming through our borders. Coming through our borders in droves, right? I was at a conference with a DEA agent from New Jersey, former DEA agent, and he was talking about mules, these people who go to Brazil and swallow 70 bags of heroin, and then sometimes the heroin busts in their stomach and they die instantly, right? And so they were showing this all graphic stuff on the screen about these mules that are going to South America and are swallowing 70 bags of heroin to bring back into this country. And I said, what percentage do you think of the heroin in America is coming in the bellies of mules? And he said, oh, quite a lot. Really? Like, I'm not in law enforcement, okay? But I can tell you that if you think the heroin in this country is coming into this country in people's bellies, you're delusional, okay? It's coming in trailer load and truckload and shipload. It's all coming in. It's all bought. It's all crime-driven, gang-driven, syndicate-driven, and it's gonna get worse. So that's my disease that I referred to. I was real quick doing extremely well in North Carolina. I was vice president of sales and marketing for a huge package delivery company. We did $27 million. We got to the Cover Inc. magazine. They chose 12 of the executives to put on the Cover Inc. magazine. We made the top 100 fastest growing privately held American companies. We were number 9. And for back then I was good looking. I was so good looking, it wasn't even funny. And I was one of the 12 people they put on the cover of that magazine. My head was so big, they didn't have a centerfold big enough to open for my ego, right? And so I tell kids this, it can't happen to me. And so my experimentation with cocaine led to a full-blown addiction to cocaine. I got a gift from God. When I shoot heroin, I have the same reaction I do as cocaine. There's not many people like me. I'd say 1 out of 10 heroin addicts have a stimulant reaction. Like if I shoot heroin, you know, like my wife got this call from a friend of ours the other day, and she's like, he goes, man, is your husband okay? And she's like, yeah, what do you mean? She's like, well, I saw him nod now. Is he on drugs? She's like, nod now. The guy doesn't sleep, okay? That's why he's nodding now. You'll never know if I'm nodding out, it's never heroin, because if I shoot heroin, I'm painting the house. I'm building a house. I'm bouncing off the walls, right? So that was a gift that God gave me, because if I didn't have that reaction, I'd be dead. Because with heroin comes sickness. So I said to myself, if I'm gonna have the same reaction to heroin that I have to cocaine, I'm gonna stick with my drug of choice, right? Which is cocaine. And so cocaine destroyed my life. And I lost my business. I spent all my money. I left North Carolina. I'll never forget, and I tell kids this in school. I was standing in my bathroom one day. My wife was at work. I'm a home care provider for our little girl, right? While I'm blowing through $250,000 of cocaine in 30 days. And I'm standing in the bathroom mirror, looking in the mirror, wondering when I can get my drugs for the day. And my daughter walks up to me and pulls on me and she says she's hungry. Like my child needs food, and I'm wondering where I'm gonna get my drugs for the day. And I look in the mirror and I say to myself, I wonder if I have a drug problem. So I decided to move back to New Jersey where there are no drugs. So I kind of get a hold of my drug addiction in the drug-free, garden-free state. And lo and behold, when I get to Belleville, New Jersey, next to Newark, I found drugs, and I was off to the races again. And I got involved in a street gang in Newark, New Jersey. Now, look at this. Do I look gangster to anybody in this room, right? I'm in a street gang in Newark, New Jersey. My life was out of control. I'm under surveillance. I'm being investigated by 16 different municipalities. My wife gets scared, and she takes the kids and goes back to North Carolina. And I came home, there's a note on the table, I know you'll choose me over drugs. I crumpled up the note, threw it in the garbage, and went and got high. And my landlord called me the next morning. He said, get out of this house. You have till 5 o'clock today. You're 3 months behind on your rent. I know what you're doing. You're getting high. You're dealing drugs. Your wife just took your kids and went back to North Carolina. You have till 5 o'clock today to get out of this house. So I had nowhere else to go. Nowhere else to go. So I moved in with my mother. My mother was a 63-year-old, just retired as a nurse, sold her big house up in the mountains of Sussex County, and bought a condo in Rockaway Township, New Jersey, and I moved in with my mother, my 63-year-old mother. And I'm a full-blown crack addict, I'm a full-blown gang member, and I'm out of control. And my drug use gets worse because now my wife is gone, so no one's to nag me, and my gang involvement gets serious, and I put this drug deal together. This drug deal goes horribly wrong. It was a methamphetamine and heroin trade between a motorcycle gang in Port Jervis, New York, and this blood set that I was involved in Newark. And one kid from the set pulls out a gun, and it was bad. And some people got shot, and money and drugs went missing, so I took off. I grabbed my stash, and I took off driving around New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania for 3 days, laying low, letting things die down for a little while. And my drugs were running out. It was late at night, Saturday, May 12th, 1995, and I decided I'm gonna go home because the next day was Mother's Day. And I figured I'll go spend the day with my mom. You know, my drugs were running out. And so I headed home, and I got home to my mom's condo apartment at 7:20 in the morning, and I walked up the sidewalk, and the front door was wide open, and the lights were on, and I thought, that's kind of weird for this time of day, and I went inside, closed the door, and walked down the hallway where our bedrooms were across from each other. And I get to the entrance to my mother's bedroom, and there she is on the floor in front of her bed. She'd been strangled and murdered. And I rushed over to my mother and I turned her over and I picked up the phone and I called 911. And while the 911 dispatcher was telling me how to give CPR to an unresponsive person, the Rockaway Township Police Department sergeant and the patrolman in tow and 2 EMTs behind them rushed into the apartment and ran down the hallway. And the sergeant got to the door of my mother's bedroom and I'm kneeling over my mother with the phone on my ear, trying to give my mother CPR. And I'm telling the sergeant to help me, please help me. And he walks over to me and he grabs me and he pulls me off my mother. He says, she's gone, son. She's gone. See, my mother had been dead for 8 hours and rigor mortis had set in, her arm was straight up in the air and I'm trying to give a corpse CPR. I'm 100% responsible for the murder of my mother on Mother's Day. And if you think it's easy saying that, I've said it 5,000 times, it doesn't get any easier. I want to tell kids that the choices that you make affect other people. My mother was murdered on Mother's Day and I'm 100% responsible. I brought that into our house, into our life. Not long after that, didn't change my life, didn't stop my drug use, didn't stop my gang involvement. $1,200 goes missing in a drug deal, and 5 kids from my gang come into my house and put a 9mm Ruger to my daughter's head. Walk into my kitchen, the guy grabs my wife by her hair and smashes her face on our kitchen counter, chips 2 of her teeth, sticking a .22 down her throat, over $1,200. And if it wasn't for the kids standing right in front of me that spoke up, they would have shot my daughter, shot my wife, and killed me over $1,200. He said, it can't be him. If he had that money in the room, he'd go get it. He loves his kid. He loves his girl. There's no way he'd let this happen. He doesn't have it. It's got to be Tariq, this other kid. It was only me or him. So they threw my kid on the floor. They threw my wife on the living room floor, and out the door we go at gunpoint. We head down to where this kid lives. We go up into his apartment, and a conversation ensues, and I tried to explain to him what just happened with my daughter, what just happened with my wife. And he says, I paid you. I says, not this week, you didn't pay me. I need $1,200. He says, I paid you. And we get into a scuffle, and the scuffle turns into a fight. And I get around the back of him because I think he's playing me out. I think he's setting me up. So I put my arm around his neck and I start choking him. I think the only way out of this is I gotta kill him. So I start squeezing as hard as I can until he goes limp, and he does. I let go and he falls down. But he's not dead, he's catching his breath. He's catching his breath. I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. And we're all looking at him like, what is he talking about? And he gets up and he pulls his arm sleeves up and he's standing there with his arms out with abscesses from his elbow to his wrist. He's the biggest heroin dealer in our set. Now he's the biggest heroin addict. He got high off a bag of dope with some girl at some party. Now he's shooting heroin into his arm, and he's the biggest heroin addict, and he can't catch up on his money. And he decides to put it on me. And the kid standing right next to me was the same kid who put the 9 to my daughter's head. He took his gun out, point blank range, and shot and killed him right in front of me. He was 19 years old. He blew him away right in front of me. I never witnessed a murder in my life. I saw dead people on the street. The only dead body I ever touched was my mother. This kid was blown away right in front of me. And we all walked out of the apartment, got in the truck, and they drove me home. And 4 hours later, there's a knock at my door. I'm sitting on the sofa with my wife and daughter trying to figure out where our life goes. And there's a knock on the door, and I get up and I answer the door, and there's 2 detectives and 3 police officers standing in front of me, and they asked me what my name is, and I told them. And they put handcuffs on me and charged me with first-degree murder. And I get put into the county jail later that night. I walk into a holding cell after I processed through intake, and the other 5 guys who were in that room is sitting in that cell. You see, when we all came out of that building, there was a camera at the end of the building that picked up the license plate of the truck that we all jumped in. When they ran the plates to the truck, it came back to the kid driving. When they went to his house, he was home. And before they ever got to the police precinct, he told the 2 arresting officers everybody who was in the room. He says, I know what this is about. I wasn't the shooter, but I'll tell you. And he gave up everybody in the room. That's how they found us all in 4 hours. And all 6 of us were charged with first-degree murder, and I sat in the county jail for 22 months. 22 months waiting for trial. My public defender comes and grabs me, and I'm over in the courtroom, and he pulls me into the conference room, and he puts a piece of paper in front of me. He says, read this. I picked the piece of paper up. It says, plea agreement. I says, plea agreement? What are you talking about? I didn't do anything. I didn't kill him. I'm not taking a plea. Son, read the plea agreement. It says, plead guilty to first-degree aggravated manslaughter in exchange for a prison sentence of 20 years. 20 years? You want me to plead guilty to something I didn't do for 20 years in prison? He said, son, if the jury, I'll go back out there and give you the best defense you'll ever get. I just need you to remember one thing. If the jury comes back with a finding of conspiracy to commit murder because you were in that room, you're getting 30 to life. You see, conspiracy to commit murder in New Jersey carries the same sentence as murder itself. I said, you mean to tell me I'm facing the same sentence as the shooter? Everybody in that room is facing the same sentence as that shooter. It's called conspiracy to commit murder, carries 30 to life. And then he leans over the table and says, oh, by the way, I talked to the shooter's attorney this morning. Guess who they're pinning the whole thing on? Guess who they're going to say orchestrated the entire thing? the suburban Caucasian kid who was present for the murder, who the murder victim owed money to, and that you rounded these kids up and you went to kill that kid. If the jury buys it, you're getting 30 to life. He pushes the piece of paper back over. He says, you have 1 minute to decide, the judge is waiting. And my entire life came down to a 60-second choice. I don't care if I have 10 kids in a classroom or 1,000 or 1,700 kids in a gymnasium at Toms River High School East that I just went to, 1,700 kids. You could hear a pin drop. You see, I had to sign that plea. I took that plea agreement, and I spent 12 years in that cell right there, 12 years of my life in a prison cell, because, not really for aggravated manslaughter, I went to prison for a line of cocaine. You see, because my first line of cocaine, that experimentation, and I have told the kids, I didn't tell you, but I've told the kids what led to that. My best friend introduced me to cocaine. When I snorted that line of cocaine, my life changed forever, forever. That one line of cocaine led me to the murder of my mother on Mother's Day, the almost murder of my daughter and wife, and then pleading guilty to a murder that I was sitting in prison at, and spent 12 years in prison. I want to talk to kids about crime. It made me a criminal. It made me a gang member. It made me into a pariah of society. I was a piece of garbage. Terrible husband, terrible wife, terrible person. And my mother was murdered on Mother's Day. Now, I try to use a more recent picture. I got a great picture of my mom. Gosh, she was gorgeous, 60 years old, me and her, an affair. I can't use it because I look at it, I start crying when I'm doing a presentation in a school. So I use this one. I don't have an emotional attachment to the picture. It's my mom holding me at the World's Fair, 1964. That lady's life was taken on Mother's Day, and I get to live with that the rest of my life. I have to put it all behind me. My father, who lives in Dallas, Texas, thinks I'm wasting my life. Thinks I'm wasting my life. He said, forget about this. You can't save the world. You can't save these kids. They're going to use drugs no matter what you do. These schools, you're fighting to get in them. Just come down to Texas. I have a $250,000 job on the table in Texas, so I just moved there. I said, Dad, you don't understand. The other day I got a letter from a girl, and she said she was thinking about suicide, but because we came into her school, she went and talked to her counselor, and she's able to talk about it. I got a letter from a mother whose daughter came home and said, listen, Michael, if you could just save one. I love that Francis Assisi about the starfish, you know what I mean? There's starfish as far as the eye can see, and the guy's like, what are you doing? He's throwing all these starfish back in the water. You can't save them? Look, there's 10,000 of them on the beach. Yeah, but I saved that one. And I saved that one, you know. Michael, if you could just save one kid. I don't want to save one kid. I want to save everyone. And I don't know who I can save. I need to get in front of as many people as possible. And I'm telling you right now, I am calling these schools and these principals and these guidance counselors and these superintendents. I'm like, let me in your school. I'm the cheapest game in town. I'm very inexpensive. There's school districts in Long Island that are bringing people like Chris Herron to their school. He charges $10,000, $12,000, and $15,000 to come to a school. You know, Rachel's challenge, $5,000. Challenge, say $25,000. We're $2,500 for an entire day. I'm beating these schools down. They should be beating my door down. I'm not saying I'm going to solve the problem. I can't. I'm one little schmuck with a microphone, okay? But if you let me in your school, I can reach kids, and I got younger kids with me that are going to reach these kids. We have parent assemblies. Sometimes I've had parent academies with 2 parents come out. 2. Sometimes I've had 800. It depends on how many overdoses happen in the town in the last week to how many parents that get out. It's crazy. I need to get into your school, and I need to show this picture to these kids. That's my daughter. 2 weeks before that incident, that was her first school picture. My little girl had a 9mm handgun to the side of her head. She's 25 years old. She remembers that day like it was yesterday. She's 25 years old. She thinks she's getting married this year, but I'm about to sabotage that wedding. No, she's going to get married whether I like it or not. My wife and daughter were almost killed. I lost my freedom. And I want to tell these kids about consequences. You make choices, the consequences are life-lasting. I'm an ex-con, and I'm going to be an ex-con for the rest of my life. I love going to the school and I tell the kids, listen, I'm an ex-con, I'm going to be an ex-con the rest of my life. If I left your school today and went to the Board of Education and picked up a job application, would they hire me? And this, no. Why? You're an ex-con. Yeah, you're right. I couldn't mow the lawn. They wouldn't let me clean the bathrooms at night while you were at home. I could come to your school, I could talk to you, but I couldn't work for the school district. I can't put on a badge. I can't be a law enforcement officer. I got denied college. 3 colleges denied me for my graduate school after I had already attended bachelor. Wilmington University, I got 2 bachelor's degrees. I went to get my master's degree, and Wilmington University says, we don't let ex-cons into our school. I said, I was here for 3 years. I have 2 bachelor's degrees. Oh, we didn't know you were an ex-con when you came to our school. See, on the master's application, it's got a question. Have you ever been convicted of a crime? Yeah, let me tell you all about it. On the bachelor's application, it didn't have that question. It does now, thanks to me. Yeah. See, when any hero pulls me over, and it's happened 6 times since I've been home from prison. Once for talking on the phone, driving like an idiot, right? Texting, talking on the phone. A stop sign, speeding. I've got a couple warnings. When any law enforcement officer pulls me over and puts my info into that little computer screen, it comes back who I was. Not who I am, who I was. And I've had 3, 4. One time I got pulled over for speeding in Vineland, New Jersey. I got a warning, but I had 6 cars behind me. Because when they punch me up on that little computer screen, I'm not a good person. And that officer doesn't know who he has. He knows who I was. And in fairness to him, there's not a piece of information on that computer screen he put there. I put it all there. And I'm telling you, you should see these kids and staff listening to me and younger kids talk to them about choices and consequences. This is something I sometimes play at school. I'll never forget the day I got in prison. My wife picked me up, right, 12 years. My license is expired, right? So she picks me up. My wife stayed with me the entire time I was in prison. On August 26th, I celebrated my 27th year wedding anniversary, right? That woman stayed with me the entire time, right? Jim Sevier, I'll tell you, my wife should be canonized, right? But she picks me up from prison. I get in the car. She's like, what do you want to do? I guess she was expecting me to say something else because I said, tiramisu. I wanted tiramisu. I had tiramisu 12 years. I want tiramisu. Right? So we went to the diner, and I had tiramisu. You could tell I like tiramisu. And so we're talking at the diner, right? But before we got to the diner, we're driving down a long 1-mile road to the prison. It's cornfield. It's in the middle of nowhere, right? Bordentown, New Jersey, Garden State Youth Correctional Facility. I get in the car. We're driving out. It's a beautiful day, scattered clouds, and I'm looking into the side view mirror. And the prison's behind me, the guard tower, the barbed wire. I'm looking in the prison in the side view mirror. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm looking at, I'm like, never again, man. Never going back. Hell on earth. And my wife's like, what? I'm like, I'm looking at the prison, man, in the side view mirror. Hell on earth, man. I'm never going back. I'm never going back. And then God directs my eyes to the words, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. I'm an arrogant, complacent young man leaving prison, and God says, look, objects in mirror are closer than they appear. Go back to doing what you're doing. Go back to doing that. If you're lucky, that object is closer than it appears. My life changed. I'm talking about it. I've told that story. The hair on my arm stands up every time I tell it. My life was in that mirror, and that was my past. You know, there's a reason why the windshield's this big and the rear view mirror is this big, but sometimes we carry what's in that rear view mirror and we carry what's in that side view mirror, and I need kids to know they need to open up their mouth, they need to go to their social worker, they need to go to their counselor, they need to go to their teacher, they need to talk to their parents, they need to open up their mouth. They need to talk about this. And that's where my emphasis is in prevention now. I'm so hard-headed and I'm so passionate, and I wish I could never sleep. Like, I really do wish I could never sleep. If I could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'd be the happiest person on earth. My wife says, yeah, you tried that, idiot. If there was a pill I could take where I never have to sleep, I would take that pill. My wife says, you tried it, it was called cocaine, it didn't work for you, so sleep, right? Sleep. But I really wish I could work all the time. I don't want to stop. I'm so passionate, so I try to get people into treatment. I try to do presentations like this. I'm a filmmaker, I have a CD, I'm a producer. Anything I can do to stop this problem, I have to do. I have the other stigma. You see, there's such stigma in this country about addicts. I'm an ex-con and an ex-addict. I have both stigmas, so I want to talk about it. And the more I can talk about it, the better it is, because most of these kids are using drugs for the first time through their friends. It's like that old MCI, friends and family plan. It's friends and it's family. It ain't some stranger. It ain't some drug dealer in some street corner someday. These kids don't believe these pills will lead to these needles. And they can, and they will, and they do 9 out of 10 times when you find yourself in that needle, you abuse that pill. It's 9 out of 10 times. That's what's happening. This is Mark's girlfriend. I found these kids in my interview for the Kids Are Dying movie that you can get back there if you'd like it. This girl right here is Mark's girlfriend. She pulls up her arm sleeves. I told her I was going into schools and I wanted to show her a picture. So she pulls up her arm. She said, here, show kids this. I don't know how old she looks to you in the picture, but she's 22 in that picture. And 9 months after that video and that picture was taken, she was found behind an abandoned building in Camden, New Jersey, and she was dead of an overdose. 9 kids and kids are dying or dead. 9. Only 1 kid's in recovery that I know of. Like this little girl, this Ashley. I didn't know her when she was that young, but how many kids do you know and grandkids and your children you have childhood pictures like that, or pictures like this where they play dress up, or the little tomboy phase that she went through at 10 and 11 years old. This is her 2 weeks before high school. And she got into high school and got hanging with some older kids, and she wanted to smoke weed and drink. Michael, it's just smoking and drinking, right? And smoking and drinking turned into Percocets, and Percocets turned into snorting pills, and snorting pills turned into snorting heroin. And that was the last picture I took of her. And 17 days after I took that picture at her house at Thanksgiving, her mother found her in the bathroom with a needle in the arm at the age of 18. 18 years of age. And I tell kids, I wish I could bring her back. I've had principals come up to me and says, listen, 90 minutes is a long time. Mount Sinai, I'll never forget it, last year, freshman orientation. He goes, we have a 2-hour block. I'm like, great, 2 hours? You'll never keep their attention for 2 hours. We have our SRO here. He'll take over when the kids get a little bit rowdy. Okay, he's not going to be taking over. I had 2 hours. They were on the edge of their seat for 2 hours. We didn't have Q&A. We went 2 hours with 3 speakers. The kids, not even one kid got off to go to the bathroom. Nobody had their phone taken away.
I was there for that.
Huh?
I was there for that.
Oh, you were there for that. I want kids to wear handcuffs when they get older. I really do. But I want them to wear them right here, okay? This comes with a pension. This comes with a lifetime of misery. I don't want kids to wear handcuffs on their wrist. That's not where heroes wear them. I don't want kids to see this from the inside. If they want to see this, I want them to become a corrections officer, and they see it from the outside. And I don't want this to continue to happen. It's happening more and more and more. Let me finish with this. Heroin use more than doubled among adults 18 to 25 in the past decade. More than doubled. More than 9 in 10 people who use heroin also use one other drug, and most times it's alcohol. 45 or benzodiazepine, right? 45% of people who use heroin were also addicted to prescription painkillers. One of the biggest things that happened in, I'll say it in a second. They're starting younger and younger and younger. Just to give you a perspective, this is the heroin epidemic of the 70s, right? This is the amount of drug overdose deaths in America in the 70s. This was the cocaine, crack cocaine epidemic in the 80s. The last year the CDC put a chart together was 07. 2015 is up here, way up here. This was defined as an epidemic. What is this? A pandemic? Here's where it begins, right? This green line is heroin overdose deaths in America up till 2011. Heroin. Here's opioids. See, we talk about heroin. It's prescription medication. It's 4 times as much. And benzodiazepines, this gray line is skyrocketing. I had a kid a couple weeks ago, he's home from treatment, he's having real cravings and anxiety, dealing with his heroin, he's in early recovery, and he goes to the doctor, and the doctor's like, how's your anxiety? Oh my God, it's unbelievable. Well, here's a prescription for Xanax. The doctor prescribed him Xanax to deal with the anxiety he was having from kicking heroin, okay? Here's where it began. People don't understand this. Opioid death rate per 100,000 began in Maine. First state to cross 45, more than 45 per 1,000, right? And the red and the burgundy is the states that have the most. And every 2 years, look at how the country changes. Look at how the country changes. And like Georgia, that's dark burgundy. Their numbers came in late. Here we are in 2009 and 2011. Every state in the country, they stopped putting this map up in 2009. 11, it's all, and now the entire country is burgundy. Now they're not doing it by state. What they did in 2013, they started doing it by county, right? Dark burgundy red is the worst for all the counties. I'm going to put it up. I haven't downloaded it yet. Suffolk and Nassau County are both dark burgundy. Both dark burgundy. 500% increase in New York in the unauthorized use of prescription medication in the last 3 years. 500% increase. And the prescription I-Stop program is starting to solve that problem. And opiates are starting to level off. But benzodiazepines are skyrocketing. And buprenorphine, Suboxone, Subutex, Methadone. I have an opinion, I don't like to say it publicly, but if we have an opiate addict and we put them on an opiate blocker and we think that they're going to be on Suboxone for the rest of their life, it's a problem. And most of the people who want these kids on medication-assisted treatment have never kicked medication-assisted treatment. And let me explain something to you. Suboxone, Subutex, and Methadone, it's like the American Express card, okay? You can't leave home without it. You can't go on vacation. It's a dependent drug. You're switching one drug for another drug. Now, we're in a crisis, So if we have to put kids on Suboxone, Subutex, methadone, Vicodin, whatever, I don't care, let's put them on it, whatever. But the goal is abstinence. The goal is to get everyone off of every drug. Abstinence is the goal. It's the goal. So what's the one vital sign that the doctor can't measure? Pain. What's your pain today, son? Oh my God, doc, it's a 10. A 10. How about your anxiety? Oh my God. The other vital sign you can't measure. Doc, it's a 10. So we're a pill society, right? Prescription drug abuse is like playing Russian roulette. These kids really do have these kind of parties where they bring pills to parties. Prescription drug abuse is a problem. So I want to just finish with this. Signs and symptoms, these slides will have that for you. I want you to understand there's a lot of things that we need to do. So awareness and student education is paramount, and treatment. There's such a gap to treatment. It's unbelievable, and it's the most important thing that we need to go after with insurance companies. Treatment insurance, we need to solve this problem. Not in my backyard. We don't think this problem is affecting our kids or our neighborhoods than it is. Treatment in county jails is nearly non-existent. Peer-to-peer programs, there's not enough of them. Recovery housing programs, there's not enough of them. We need to educate the educators. I don't believe teachers get good information on current drug trends, and they don't hear the signs, the symptoms, they don't hear the names and nicknames. Kids are talking about Skittles and Roxy's and Blues, and teachers are like, what? You know, if we need to educate our teachers. And with all due respect, I don't want law enforcement doing it alone. They can't. We can't rely on law enforcement to solve this problem. My God, we can't arrest and incarcerate our way out of this problem. So these are all the problems. The New York Prescription Monitoring Program went into effect with the iStop program, right? Here's what happened. From 2012 was when the iStop program took full effect. 2013, there was a 75% drop in overdoses from prescription medication, right? Because people could no longer get their prescription medication. Shutting the pill mills down in Florida, doing some things in Tennessee, some things that really happened. But when this drop in prescription opiate overdoses in New York happened, a 75% drop, heroin overdoses went through the roof. Went through the roof. And you know what bothers me about Connecticut, who put the mandatory program into effect a month and a half ago, and New Jersey, who put it into effect a month ago? What scares me is we put those things into effect, and we have absolutely no plan for the amazing wave of opiate-dependent people that are going to come our way. And we just not talk about it, maybe it'll go away. Twice as many in rehab. This was the cover of Newsday. 144 heroin deaths in 13, right? Went up because in 2012, it was 43 the year before, and because of iStop, it jumped to 144. This was the best article I've ever read on heroin in Long Island press. It was an 8-page article, how Long Island is losing its war on heroin. And it's getting worse, and it's going to get worse because the supply is coming in. So there's a lot of other solutions that are important. If you don't know what naloxone is, this is one of the things I talk to kids about, picking up the phone and calling 911. If you're at a party, you don't know if the kid's overdosed, you don't know if the kid's drunk, just passed out, whatever, call 911. Let somebody in.
Sorry, I just overheard they're talking about discussing putting it over the counter at CVS.
Yes, so CVS is planning to put naloxone in every one of their stores in America. Okay, listen, naloxone's great, saves lives. It's just not the answer, because we bring a life back. We get them to the hospital. The hospital can't get that drug addict out of their emergency room fast enough. Okay? Naloxone is not new. It's been around since the 60s. I was brought back by naloxone 3 times in the late 80s. Every single time I was brought back in the hospital, when I was released hours later, my first stop was my dealer. There was a girl in Newton, New Hampshire that we were getting into a detox bed. She was graduated 2nd in her class in New Hampshire. She was Narcaned 9 times. From June graduation till the following May, when she was shooting up in the car driving home, and she had a car accident and broke her neck. Her needle was in the arm and they pulled her out of the car. She was Narcan 9 times. Okay, that kid he was Narcan from the rest area. The
NYIT.
Huh?
NYIT.
From the rest area. The name of the rest area I can't remember. From the rest area, Englewood Hospital, he was Narcan 6 times. 6 times on the way from the spot that they found him at to the hospital. I want this everywhere. I don't mind it in CVS, but just think about it. I was talking to a woman who has Narcan in her purse, right? And her son's in recovery, and he's relapsing, and he's back, and he's relapsing, and he's back, right? And so she carries it around, and she says, I keep it in my purse though at work in case any of my coworkers need it. I'm like, where do you work? She goes, ShopRite, Cape May County, right? ShopRite. She goes, probably 40% of everybody who works at ShopRite is on an opiate or heroin. And I carry it in case I said, think about how you say that. You're talking about carrying your purse like Sweet Low in case anyone needs sweetener for their coffee. Like, you're carrying an opiate reversal drug in your purse and you take it to work. I mean, are we getting too complacent about this? Where that's the answer? That's not the answer. Just like methadone's not the answer, Suboxone's not the answer. We need to get to our kids and talk to them about self-worth and self-love and how drugs will kill them. Think about it. You can't take your third grader into the kitchen, turn all 4 burners on your stove on and say to the kid, touch one of those burners. Put your hand right down. So I'm not doing that. Okay. Take this fork, stick it in that electric socket right there. No. How do we make heroin the electric socket? How do we make marijuana and alcohol the stove burner? We do it because we talk about solutions and we talk to kids, we educate them, we educate the educators, and we mandatory make parents come to the school, right? For a back to school night. Listen, we can't make parents come to school. Do your kids go on trips, dances, field trips? Do the seniors park at school? Do you give away parking passes? Do your kids play sports? Mandate that the parents come to listen to a presentation about drugs. So please, favor strictness to freedom. I tell parents that all the time. We need to be much more educated than our kids ever had. The suburbs can't be Shangri-La and serendipity all the time. It just can't be. We need to learn about signs and symptoms, right? Remove all unwanted and unused and expired prescription medications from your home. I put something up on social media that day and got a lot of criticism about it. We had a DEA Take-Back Day, right? DEA Take-Back Day where law enforcement sets up a day and they set up a place and everybody could bring their unused prescription, and they're collecting more and more pounds, hundreds of pounds of unused prescription medication, and we're taking it back. And I'm thinking, does anybody see a problem with this? Like, maybe we have too much out there. Why are we having a take back twice a year to take the drugs back? And people are getting involved, and they're having a party, and we're doing a drug take back day, and they're announcing in the paper, we took back 26 pounds of drugs. Well, isn't there a problem here then? If you're taking more and more back every single year, maybe we need to put the screws to the pharmaceutical industry and stop the overprescribing of medications. But we're America. We're a pill society. We use 90% of the world's hydrocodone. We use 90% of the world's oxycodone. This is a problem. And we need to reel it back in, and we can't be afraid to go to these 16 lobbyists per member of Congress and say, you know what? These pharmaceutical advertisements are coming off TV. We don't need them. Remember we used to go to the doctor and he would diagnose us and maybe give us a prescription? Now we diagnose ourselves off of a commercial. You know at the end of the commercial? Ask your doctor if this is right for you. Of course it's right for me. Look at her. She's so happy. So I have a lot of websites of information, a lot of websites good on my website. You just go to my website, these slides are there. Here's my website, steeritstraight.org. There's my number, call me 24/7, really. Kids Are Dying, you can see the trailers. If you want a Kids Are Dying movie or an American Epidemic movie, I'm desperate for support, and all the money allows me to go to schools and say, listen, like Weymouth High School called today and have office called, and they said they have $300 in their budget. I said, okay, sketch it. You're going to do it for $300? Did you say that's how much they had? How can I tell them no, and how can I tell them we need more money? I have money here and there, and grant money from here and there. I'll make it up. Well, I'm a nonprofit. I'm not supposed to make a profit. You know what I mean? I should have ran HP, but I want to reach kids. I want to impact parents. I want to make a difference, and I want to stop this, and I need help. I need help, so please. The movies are extremely interesting. There's a Long Island version there. It's 38 minutes. It's only $5. I traveled the country. I met a whole bunch of artists who made songs about recovery, and I put a CD together. I have a second one coming out. I have a movie coming out very soon, as soon as I can put a GoFundMe page up and get $6,000 for post-production. It's called Higher Power, the Power of God in Recovery. I got a family movie coming out called The Family Affair, because addiction is not something that the addict gets to participate in. Everybody in the family gets to participate in this. It's a family disease. So we can't rely on our legislators to solve this problem and implement legislation, but there's legislation that they have to implement. And we can't rely on our law enforcement heroes to arrest and incarcerate our way out of this problem. And we really can't rely on schools, but we've got to demand school. I should not be beating down schools' doors to try to get into schools. I shouldn't. They should be beating down my door. I should have 10 teams. And I can put together 10 teams, dynamic, educationally based programs to have kids come home and talk to their parents about this. I will tell you, I live in New Jersey. We weren't the first state with Good Samaritan and naloxone, but we were one of the first states to get, every cop in our state carries Narcan. It's gonna be in every single one of our school districts. And you know, someone said to me the other day, why do we need Narcan at schools? There's people, why do we need Narcan at schools? Because kids are overdosing in high school. Prescription experimentation begins in 6th grade. 6th grade, okay? Alcohol's a year earlier. But listen, one of the things that needs to happen, if somehow you ingested some poison, some antifreeze got into your Gatorade, say, I worry about that in my house sometimes. But that's a joke. But if you ingested some poison, you'd be taken to the hospital. And your vital signs are all over the place. They're pumping your stomach, you're getting the garbage. The poison is in your body, right? The hospital's not releasing you until you're stable. They're going to keep you in a hospital bed to detox the poison in your body. Heroin is a poison. I can't tell you, there's about 28 programs that I work with where I can get a kid into free of charge. Most of them are Christian-based programs that support kids, Teen Challenge, Mission Teens, Faith Farms, right? My biggest problem is I can't get kids detoxed. I know I have 13 kids that died on a waiting list. 13 kids. When we're getting them into detox, trying to get them into a detox bed, no insurance. The Affordable Care Act was supposed to solve all this problem. Listen, the Affordable Care Act is a disaster. They have no idea the effect what's happening, especially in the states that didn't get Medicaid expansion, but we cannot get our kids into detox. I don't know how to do this, but I think if a kid shows up at a hospital and they need detox of heroin, the hospital should admit them, put them in a room, and detox them of a heroin. Then we can get them into treatment programs in our country. It's absurd. It's absurd. Treatment on demand is such a problem. We have to save our kids. This is the worst public social health crisis our country, Suffolk and Nassau County, has seen. And it's not getting any better, folks. It's going to get worse. And we've got to educate our kids. We've got to talk to them about this. I'm telling you, it's not, if it's not me, if it's me and 20 other programs, whatever it is. And please, we got to stop taking parents who've lost their kids and law enforcement into middle schools and high schools and prosecutors and district attorneys into middle schools and high schools to talk to kids. Because the kids who are at risk, the kids who are using, I'm not going to get a message from a police officer. I'm going to get a message from a young kid in recovery and an old guy whose entire life has been affected by drugs and alcohol. And then we need to do follow-up. We need to do we don't have enough education and prevention in our schools, and we need more. And we need more. We desperately need more. Yes, ma'am.
How long does it take to get you into school? Like, what's your schedule?
I'm so booked up, like Indiana, Florida, and New England, but I have enough people who can replace me wherever I am. I mean, if my trips are booked, like Indiana, I can't, I have airfare, hotels, and all that stuff, but if I'm in New Jersey, I got enough people who can take over the school that I'm scheduled at, and I'll come here. I mean, I went into Ward Melville, the principal, it was so difficult. If it wasn't for a woman named Debbie Longo, I wouldn't have got in there. Okay, she helped me get into that school. And we really don't have a drug problem in Ward Melville High School. And I'm like, the nickname of your school is, does anybody know? The Pharmacy. The Pharmacy. She had a list of 9 kids that graduated in the last 5 years at Ward Melville who were dead. I just went through this with Old Bridge High School in New Jersey. I had a girl come up and she said, I said, I can't get into Old Bridge High School. You're a graduate there. Your boyfriend just died 6 months ago. He graduated with you 4 years ago. She's like, I know 6 kids off the top of my head who've died since 2010 that went to Old Bridge High School. I said, let's go to the Board of Education meeting. You go with me and I'll get up and I'll read those names. So we're going to the Board of Education next Tuesday. You know how many names she has? 18. 18 since 2010. I will go into any school. And honestly, like I just went through this with a school in Indiana. The coordinator there is so frustrated. She put on Facebook, she's put out a message to all the parents in the district because they keep calling us, when can you come to our school? When can you come to our school? And the school, we don't have a problem. We don't have a problem in our district. You need to take that to Amityville and Wyandanch and those kind of districts, right? This is where this district is. This is the kind of district that this problem is happening. But anyway, long story short, why am I trying to get into schools? I don't understand this. For the life of me, I don't understand. And I'm frustrated. I'm not the greatest panacea. I can make a difference. And so $2,500 is the day price, unless they have 2,000, unless they have 1,500, unless they have 1,000. I don't care. I'll do it for free. I'll do it for free. From where I live to come up here and back cost me $105. I don't care. I'll do it for free.